So these are some more parts that we're going to be set up for beam weaponry, and to add a little more importance to the side wings, they're going to be mounted to the side here. I thought I would install a beam weapon to the front, as well as sharpen up some of the edges there. But I cut a notch, and I made a box to extend the cap. And then I also carved a notch into it, so that way I can fix it to the inner frame part of the shell here. I'll glue it to this section here. That also gives me access to the polycap underneath and enough room for the polycap to rotate under there. So there should be a full range of movement. So just gotta glue that. That's one of the almost the final parts. The only ones I've left are the couple gap filling and attaching the mono eye. Testing out some new Apoxie Sculpt for filling in large gaps and seams on these projects. Looks like these have a pretty decent working time. Looks like I'll be able to spend a few hours with this stuff if I need to. It said after thoroughly mixing, maybe wait 5 minutes. It'll become a little bit easier to work with. And I guess up to 30 minutes is pretty tacky. And then after a couple hours, it's easier to sculpt, and the farther you go, the harder it's going to get. And after 24 hours, this says it's supposed to be hard, cured, and waterproof. So I'm just testing out on a a couple easy flat parts. So just got one of the engine parts here, just kind of putting it along these major seams here, as well as the gap here where I shortened this unit, as well as getting rid of this crossbar detail. So it's still pretty tacky right now. I think it might spread a little bit easier with some water, so I'll have to try that later. And I just put it into some of these smaller cracks here. Might just use some milliput or some Tamiya putty. Might be a little bit better for areas like this small. But we'll give it a go. Cut to 24 hours from now. One thing I've done is I've gotten a shipment of many mono eyes. I was able to attach this gem and metal housing to the head here, and it's given me just enough clearance to fully rotate with the original version of the Sazabi head. Give me a nice mono eye profile. One downside though is the way my current setup is. The top shell is quite a bit higher than the bottom, leaving kind of a strange gap. So I am going to extend the lip from the top plate down to give more of a tighter shell. I've finished the first round of the experiment with the epoxy. I cemented some of this panel line there. Looks like that. It's fairly shallow, but shallow enough that I wanted to get rid of it. And this stuff works pretty well. I'll have to try adding a little bit of water in my next round, but yeah, it seems to be pretty hard. We'll do a whole pass on all the other parts, probably a couple passes to get these areas like this gap here filled in and any larger openings. See you in the next part. Alright, so we're going to continue a little bit with the Apoxie Sculpt. I'm going to fill in a few of these gaps right here, and some of the more raw areas of all this scratch built stuff, as well as this hole's a little bit loose with the attachment. Hopefully I can fix that. And I think just a little bit on the sides here, there's a little bit of damage. We can shore that up. So I'm gonna try mix these guys and use a little bit of water. Just gonna get a few drops there. So this is the first time I'm using water with the Apoxie Sculpt, so we will just have to see how well this goes. Grab a little bit more than last time, and hopefully we can get it to a little bit more consistent, or a little bit more liquidy. Last time, earlier in the video, when we were trying it out for the first time, it was a little bit like Play-Doh, and I want it to be a little bit more flexible and easier to work with. We're talking about the working times earlier. If I were to leave these for a little bit longer, I'd be able to work these a little bit better. This isn't exactly pretty, but I think that'll cover up all the imperfections, and there's just a lot of dips and areas where aren't exactly the same plane, so this should hopefully fill it up. Now when I sand this, most of this will actually probably disappear, but it should leave the remaining surface relatively flat. And I just bulked up this area around the hole a little bit so that I can sand it a little bit and just retain some of that pressure fit. The other side seems to be fine. This one I just increased this hole a little too big. And if I can't fix that, I'll probably just glue the peg in place, and then I'll still be able to detach the sides, but I think that's a good start. We're finally at this stage. Pretty much everything here is all blocked out, working, functional. All the parts are in place. I'm confident to move into the next stage of adding some additional minor detail, maybe some tiny metal parts, or doing some panel scribing. So I may re-emphasize some of the existing panels, but I will probably add in some more detail work along the main body, along these sides here, and then add some small attachment parts. The only thing I haven't done is add some energy cables. I may or may not. I'll see where the build goes. But for the most part, this is pretty much done. I was doing some gap filling on these areas here and pretty much sand completely flat. Pretty smooth to the touch. Oh, and I also extended the top lid down a bit, giving it a little bit more of a narrow slit for the mono eye, which now thankfully has the metal part, which I was able to graft essentially straight onto the base plate inside there. These are the, I guess, the wings with energy weapons attached to this mounting part, which attaches to the engine pods there. The last thing I'm working on is a pretty simple mod. I have since put in a couple, at least test fitting for now, a couple magnets inside the fin funnels there. So if you shake it hard enough, they will come off. They're not like the strongest magnets in the world, and they are surrounded in putty at the moment. When I super glue them, they'll be much closer together, so they should have a slightly stronger bond. That'll kind of emphasize the back of the engines there, kind of make it look like an aircraft. So, and I think I'm okay with just having the parts glued in there. You're never probably gonna see it much. It is a really tiny magnet. Look forward to the next video or two where I go through adding some additional detail and maybe prepping for a couple metal parts and do any minor surface finishes for that. See you next time, I guess. Later.